So if you caught my video yesterday, this is the second half of me looking at this video called Most Hated Cities in Australia, which has basically been created by someone using AI and is, I think the only word to describe it is hateful. It is definitely someone who really knows nothing about Australia, and it's just really, really negative. And it really, really annoyed me when I saw it, so I decided that I had to do a reaction to it. So this is now the top 5, because we looked at 10 to 6 yesterday. So this is the top 5 most hated cities. Now if you're new to my channel and you like what I'm doing, please hit subscribe. I'm hoping to reach the next milestone with my subscriptions. Also, if you like what you see, hit the like button and don't forget to leave comments below. They're the things that help this video get seen by other people on YouTube.
Number 5. Alice Springs. Alice Springs, deep in the heart of Australia's outback, is famous for its rich Aboriginal culture and breathtaking desert scenery. But living here isn't as idyllic as it sounds. The climate is one of the biggest obstacles. In summer, temperatures can exceed 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit, while winters bring freezing nights. This extreme weather makes daily life a challenge, with scorching heat in the day and cold, uncomfortable nights. Another serious issue is the city's high crime rate. Alice Springs has become known for its alarming levels of crime, much of it driven by social struggles and alcohol abuse. Many locals have expressed concerns about their safety, and this has taken a toll on the community's overall well-being. Then there's the isolation. Alice Springs is one of the most remote places in Australia, with the nearest major city more than 1,000 kilometers away. This remoteness can make people feel disconnected from the rest of the country, and simple things like traveling or getting everyday necessities are more difficult and expensive. While Alice Springs offers stunning landscapes and a deep cultural history, the extreme weather, safety issues, and isolation are just a few reasons many find living here far from ideal.
Okay, so the biggest issue with using stock footage is that you are putting out misinformation. And I'm sorry if this is a slightly disturbing scene to look at, but this made me so angry. This is not Alice Springs. And let's talk about what the crimes in Alice Springs are. It's not about what is being depicted in this image. Most of the things that occur in Alice Springs are to do with alcohol consumption and vandalism. It's not what is being depicted here in this scene. And yeah, I know I'm being evasive, but YouTube doesn't like when you say certain things. So it makes me really angry that this creator has thrown this image in amongst a bunch of other stock footage when they're talking about crimes in Alice Springs and giving the wrong impression about Alice Springs completely. I really wish there was a way of getting YouTube to stop videos like this. The amount of stock footage that's used in this video that is inaccurate and giving people false impressions just makes me irate. Now, in terms of it being remote, this is the third place that he's said is, oh, you know, people hate it because it's remote. This is every single place that he's spoken about. He said people hate it because of the weather. And like I said in yesterday's video, you choose where to live depending on what sort of weather you like. People who live in Alice Springs, if they really hated the weather, they would leave. For many people in Alice Springs, the weather is the best attraction. There's just the thing with this video is that all they have done is they pulled out the downsides of living in Alice Springs without even looking at the positives. Now, I've never been to Alice Springs, so I can't come out with a whole heap of positives, but I would love to hear people comment below on some of the things that are really great about Alice Springs, because we need to basically even things up a bit here.
Number 4. Melbourne. Melbourne may be known as Australia's cultural capital, but not everyone is a fan of living in this bustling metropolis. One of the city's biggest downsides? The weather. Melbourne is famous for having 4 seasons in one day, with weather that can change from sunny to stormy within a matter of hours. Locals joke about always needing to carry an umbrella, but for many, the unpredictable climate is more frustrating than funny. Cold winds in the winter and sudden rain showers throughout the year leave people constantly on edge, never knowing what to expect. Another major issue is the cost of living. Melbourne has become one of the most expensive cities in Australia. Housing prices and rent have skyrocketed, making it difficult for both locals and newcomers to find affordable places to live. Everyday expenses, from groceries to dining out, can quickly add up, and for many, Melbourne's price tag is simply too high to justify. Then there's the traffic. As Melbourne continues to grow, so do its congestion problems. Long commute times and traffic jams are common complaints from those living in and around the city. While public transport options are available, overcrowded trams and unreliable schedules often leave commuters feeling frustrated. Despite its world-class food scene, art galleries, and endless events, Melbourne isn't without its challenges. The constant weather changes, high cost of living, and traffic headaches make it a difficult place for many to enjoy on a daily basis. While some thrive in the hustle and bustle, others find the stress outweighs the charm of the city.
Okay, I will admit, the other day when I went down to Melbourne, it was a little bit cold in the afternoon when the wind came up. But that was my fault for being unprepared and being so accustomed to Bendigo weather where you don't get those afternoon sea breezes. People in Melbourne know how to dress for the weather. Sure, you might get 3 seasons in one day. That's not every day of the year. The other day when I was down there, it was actually a really nice day. And you do see really nice weather in Melbourne. You do get those weird days of 3 seasons in one day, but that's not every day of the year. And you see, we have this modern fandangled thing that's called a weather forecast. And you know what? That allows you to figure out what clothes you're going to wear for the day. Now, not having actually lived in Melbourne, only being someone who visits Melbourne, I'm going to speak from a perspective of someone who grew up in Tassie. You layer your clothes. If you know that it's going to be one of those days, then chances are it is going to start off cold. It's going to get cold again in the afternoon. So you layer up so that you can remove layers or add layers during the day. It's not something that most people would say that they hate about Melbourne. It's not ideal for some people. And then you get people like me who decide, well, I don't want to live in a place like that. I'm going to live somewhere like Bendigo where it's sunny most of the year. It comes down to people choosing where they live. There's always going to be pros and cons with the weather everywhere. And can I just remind you, every single city that this dude has spoken about, he's claimed the weather as being one of the major bad things about the city. I will also mention when he made that comment about how everyone carries umbrellas. I didn't see one single person carrying an umbrella the other day in Melbourne. As for the cost of eating out, that's a joke, right? The other day in Melbourne, I stopped near I think it was near Flinders Street station. I can't remember where we grabbed lunch in the end. But I grabbed a plate of fried rice, and honestly, there was enough for 2 people, and the cost was really, really good. I think I paid $9.50, and had I actually got it in a takeaway tub, I could have had like 2 meals out of it, or I could have shared it with one of the other people that I was with, had they not already bought their own meals. There are so many good food malls in Melbourne with really affordable meals that are decent sized serves. So I don't know what he's talking about it being expensive to eat out. Yeah, the traffic is a bit congested. I won't drive all the way into the city when I go to Melbourne. I'll park in the outer suburbs and catch a train. Because public transport in Melbourne is brilliant. I don't know what he's talking about in terms of things being unreliable, having unreliable schedules, because there's trams just about every minute. If one tram is late, it's only going to be a few minutes late. If you miss that tram, there's going to be another one in 5 minutes. Same with the trains. You go to Flinders Street or Central, and there's a choice of trains. Unless, of course, you're going further out, like Bendigo. But even then, at the most, you're going to wait 20 minutes for your train. And that's if you've just timed it really badly and you've just missed the train that's left.
Number 3. Hobart, the capital of Tasmania.
So, if you are some dumbass who's going to do an AI video, here's the thing. Use punctuation so that it's not going, oh, Hobart is the capital. You forgot the full stop. You could have at least put it on a new line so it didn't sound particularly stupid. Sorry, that's happened right through this video with the poor punctuation used in the script, and clearly they've just copied and pasted stuff from God knows where. But yeah, this video is just really, really getting my goat. And no, in case you were wondering, that's not Hobart.
May look picturesque with its scenic views and charming small-town vibe, but for many, living here isn't as ideal as it seems. One of the biggest complaints about Hobart is its isolation. Tasmania is an island, and Hobart, being its largest city, feels quite removed from the rest of Australia. This geographic separation makes travel expensive and time-consuming, whether you're trying to fly to the mainland or simply order products that might take longer to ship. For some, this isolation leads to a feeling of being cut off from the excitement and opportunities found in Australia's larger cities. Another challenge is limited job opportunities. Hobart's economy heavily depends on tourism, hospitality, and government services, which can make it tough for people looking for work outside of these industries. Younger professionals often find themselves having to move to other states for better career prospects, which leaves Hobart with a reputation for being great for retirees, but not so much for those looking to build a career. Then there's the weather. Hobart is known for its cool climate, which is appealing to some, but for others it's too cold and gloomy, especially during the long winters. The chilly winds coming off the water and frequent overcast days can make life in Hobart feel dreary, particularly for those used to more temperate or sunny climates. Lastly, Hobart's cost of living has been rising, especially in terms of housing prices. With more people moving to Tasmania for a quieter lifestyle, demand for homes has skyrocketed, making it difficult for locals to keep up with the growing prices. While Hobart has its natural beauty and charm, the isolation, limited job market, and gloomy weather make it a difficult place for many to settle into long term.
Okay, this whole thing about it being remote and isolated. This is what, the 4th place he's said that about now? It's an hour's flight from Hobart to Melbourne. A lot of the time, the flights are really quite affordable. If you do want to drive, then it does become expensive. You're looking at, in peak season, one way with your vehicle is about $500 on the Spirit of Tasmania, so it does become expensive. But if you are wanting to travel with your car, then it is a good way to go. Of course, you then have the cost of a cabin on top. So, yes, travelling on the Spirit can become expensive in peak season. As for postage, it takes 1 day usually for things to get to Tassie from Melbourne. Outside of the CBD, you probably have to add another day for it to get to wherever in Tasmania. But you can order something from Melbourne, it'll be there in 2-3 days tops. That's hardly a long wait. It's not much more of a wait getting from Sydney and whatever. Anywhere you are in Australia, whatever state you're ordering from, then, there are going to be delays depending on how far away the states are. If you're getting stuff from overseas, like I said, you're probably only adding 1 or 2 more days in terms of postage. So that's just an utter joke. Yeah, the job situation has always been a bit ordinary in Tasmania. But I don't think that's a reason for people to hate Tasmania. I think too there is this whole sense of the grass is greener. So for a lot of young people, when they finish university, they do have this notion in their head of going to Sydney and getting some job that pays bucket loads of money. And so they do move to the mainland without actually trying to find their ideal job in Tassie first. And that's one of the things that people tend not to realise. There are job opportunities in Tasmania if you are willing to be patient and if you are willing to work at it. And if you are willing to find other things to do in the meantime. It might not be as quick as Melbourne or Sydney, where you have bigger companies, etc. But if you are determined to find a particular career, you can still do that in Tasmania. Now, I will admit, in terms of weather, yes, the first thing I noticed moving to Bendigo was that in the first 3 months, I saw more sunlight here than in an entire year in Tasmania. It does get quite overcast, and the winters do seem really, really long. But if you enjoy living in a temperate climate, and you don't like hot weather, you like the cooler weather, then for a lot of people that's a positive thing. Once again, it just comes down to personal preference. And a lot of people love Tasmania so much that they're happy to put up with the dreary days and 10 months of winter, because the benefits, the bonuses that come from living in Tasmania far outweigh that. So I find it an utter joke that he's ranked Hobart so high in terms of places that people hate in Australia. Most people absolutely love Hobart.
Number 2, Sydney. Sydney, one of the most iconic cities in Australia, is known for its stunning harbour, famous landmarks like the Sydney Opera House, and a vibrant city life. But while millions of tourists visit every year, the locals have a different story to tell. Sydney's cost of living is one of the highest not just in Australia, but in the world. Housing prices in particular have skyrocketed over the years, making homeownership a distant dream for many. Even renting can leave you feeling stretched, with rent prices that are through the roof, especially in desirable areas close to the city center. But it's not just housing. Everyday expenses in Sydney are considerably higher than in other parts of Australia. From groceries to dining out, the cost of simply getting by in Sydney can feel overwhelming for a lot of people. The high prices mean that even with a decent salary, many people struggle to maintain the lifestyle they want. Then there's the traffic. Sydney's roads are notoriously congested, and commuting can quickly become a daily grind. Whether you're sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic or crammed into a packed train, getting around the city often feels like an exhausting and time-consuming mission. Public transport, while available, is often overcrowded, delayed, or unreliable, adding to the frustration of living in such a big city. And let's not forget the overcrowding. Sydney's popularity has led to densely packed neighborhoods, especially in areas near beaches like Bondi. The constant flow of tourists also adds to the hustle and bustle, leaving locals feeling overwhelmed by the sheer number of people around, especially during peak holiday seasons. Despite its beauty and global appeal, Sydney's high living costs, traffic issues, and overcrowding leave many residents feeling like the city isn't all it's cracked up to be.
Okay, I'll be the first to admit that I do not like driving in Sydney because of the traffic. But that's coming from someone who drove for 20 plus years in the smallest state in Australia. So for me, it is significant. But I know a lot of people also say that they don't like driving in Sydney. But yes, it's expensive. Yes, it has a huge population. But let's talk about relativity here. Okay, first of all, people love Sydney. People who don't love Sydney tend to move away. But Sydney is like the place that a lot of people from smaller states and smaller areas, regional areas, want to move to because of the glitz and glamour. It's not really a hated place. Some people aren't fans of the traffic. They're not fans of perhaps the crowds, but they don't hate it, mostly. Now, in terms of what I was saying before about relativity, compared to many of the big cities in other countries, Sydney is still kind of small. I mean, let's get real. It's not like New York, for example. It's clean air still, unless of course you buy the highway. Transportation is actually pretty good. Yeah, a lot of people use transportation because of the traffic. So maybe it is a bit crowded sometimes on trains. But, you know, I just, this video has just got me so annoyed because of this whole notion of this guy has pulled out the things that are downsides of living to a place and claimed that they are the reasons why so many people hate the place.
Number 1. Gold Coast. Topping the list is the Gold Coast, a city that may look like the ultimate beach paradise, but for many residents, it's far from perfect. Known for its stunning beaches, high-rise buildings, and a party-filled lifestyle, the Gold Coast is a major tourist hotspot. But this is where the first big issue comes in: tourism overload. While the city thrives on the tourism industry, the constant influx of visitors can make living here feel chaotic. Streets are packed, beaches are overcrowded, and locals often find themselves sharing their daily space with thousands of holidaymakers. For those who live and work in the area, the hustle and bustle of the tourist season never seems to end. But beyond the tourists, the crime rate in certain parts of the Gold Coast, particularly in areas known for nightlife, has become a growing concern. Some areas have a reputation for being hotspots for drug use, theft, and other criminal activities, especially in neighborhoods close to the nightlife scene. This has left some residents feeling unsafe, particularly during late-night hours. Then there's the urban sprawl. The Gold Coast stretches across a large area, which means that while you might live near the beach, accessing other parts of the city can be a hassle. Public transport is limited and many residents rely heavily on cars, leading to traffic congestion and long commutes, especially during peak times. The city's infrastructure hasn't kept up with its rapid growth, which leaves roads and transport systems struggling to cope. Despite its glamorous image, the Gold Coast's overcrowded beaches, safety concerns, and inconvenient sprawl make daily life difficult for many residents. What may seem like the ultimate vacation spot can quickly lose its charm when faced with the realities of living there full-time. It's a great place to visit, but for many, the Gold Coast just doesn't live up to the hype as a place to settle down.
Okay, so it's at this point where I just throw my hands up in the air and go, oh my gosh, this is just insane. I'm speechless. Silence, sorry. I have no words. This is just pure hatred from some moron in another country who's clearly jealous of Australia. They've pulled out a bunch of big cities in Australia, not that Hobart's big, but they pulled out a bunch of capital cities and then other cities that are known, and looked for some negativity. They've thrown in a bunch of stock images, like this image here that's supposed to be Gold Coast. Like, are you totally stupid? I just think, I wish there was a way of getting YouTube to take these AI videos more seriously and act to get rid of them. Because all this video has achieved is to put out a whole heap of misinformation about Australia and to try and make all these cities in Australia look really bad, and they're really, really hated. Now, I will just say one thing about the Gold Coast in terms of this negativity and how, oh, it's so touristy, yada, yada, yada. There's 2 new channels that I've covered recently that are actually both are British couples who have moved to the Gold Coast. And you've seen in those videos them talking about Australia and them experiencing Australia. And if you go to their channels, you can see how much they love living on the Gold Coast. And they have not experienced any of these things that this tosser is talking about. You look at their videos and you think, wow, I could go and live there. That looks like a really amazing place to live. So I'm going to leave it at that, because my brain's just gone, nah, that's enough. I'm not even going to try to talk about this video anymore because it's just done my head in thoroughly. So thanks for listening. If you've made it through to the end, I hope you haven't become quite as frustrated as I have. And thanks for tolerating my rants. Sometimes you just got to say it how it is. So I'll catch you in the next one.